Hello, and Happy New Year! I always get very excited around this time of year, not because it's a time of new opportunities and goals or a fresh start, but because I get to share my unsolicited opinion on the movies of the year, and I have a feeling this is going to be the best one yet. This has been one of my favorite years for film recently, for so many reasons, and I had a very difficult time picking just 20 to talk about, despite still missing so many from the year, but I did it, and I'm here now to share those with you, but not before I share a few honorable mentions, which include No Hard Feelings, directed by Gene Stupnitsky, Anatomy of a Fall, directed by Justine Triet, which I'm sure you've heard plenty about, and Dream Scenario, directed by Christopher Borgley. Again, so many great movies this year, and it was so hard to narrow it down, but I hope you enjoy my list, starting with
In this house, there's some whores in this house.
I already went pretty in-depth on this movie in my TIFF recap video, so definitely check that out. But in a nutshell, I'm really big on Craig Gillespie's style, and I think this was the perfect story for him to tell. I think he does comedy very well in his movies, where he knows he can rely on the ridiculousness of the true events, rather than embellishing it with what can come off as corny satire. And you already know how I feel about Paul Dano. I've been on the Dano train for years, and he's just so good in this. Overall, I just had a really fun time, and it sucks that not a lot of people saw it.
And listen to the beat.
I saw this at TIFF and I really liked it. I don't know a whole lot about cheerleading, so I was really intrigued by this and thought it was a really interesting look at the world of it. I really love the camera work here, and I thought the performances were incredible. I mean, Devery Jacobs and Evan Rachel Wood are great in everything, and this is no different, but it was the supporting cast that really grabbed me. Everything felt so real that sometimes I thought I was watching a documentary. I thought the music was really good too. It's got all this techno score that's done by D.W. Watterson, who directed the movie. Yeah, I just think this movie's really cool, along with Watterson, so definitely check it out when this gets released. Most people watching this probably have no idea what it is, and I wouldn't either if not for an intriguing still of Wayne Campbell holding a bust of Donald Trump on the Vancouver Film Festival site. How I describe this movie is it's a cinematic collage of 80s and 90s sci-fi, the Seth Rogen universe, and 2010s meme culture, all telling the apocalyptic story of the 2016/2020 elections and early lockdown. It's a movie that uses exclusively copyrighted material from pop culture, chopped up to create a totally new narrative feature. I wasn't familiar with Soda Jerk, who is the creative team behind this, but I've become a huge fan of them since seeing Hello Dankness. I'm super interested in DIY filmmaking, and I love the concept of using pre-existing material to make something new and personal. Again, just super cool movie, and I'm so happy I got to see it since I'm not sure it's going to be very widely available in the future. I was lucky enough to catch this at TIFF and was really surprised by it, mainly because at the time there was no trailer, so I really had no idea what to expect, but I thought it was awesome. I talked about it a bit in my TIFF video, but basically, I loved the satirical approach to the subject matter. In fact, the thing I remember most about this movie was how often my stomach hurt from laughing. But on top of that great satire is a real earnest story with incredible performances, especially from Jeffrey Wright in the lead and Sterling K. Brown, who gave one of my favorite performances of the year. I don't really want to say much more, as I think I really benefited from going into this one blind, so hopefully this short review is intriguing enough for you to go see it for yourself. I haven't seen this on anybody's list, which made me question if I really did like this movie, but yeah, I do really like this movie. I really have no interest in Marvel for the most part, but I've always been a huge fan of these movies. I think James Gunn is an excellent director, and the comedy and the music aspect of these films really speak to me. I was really nervous that this would disappoint because, as I said, I'm a huge fan of the previous two, and I think we can all agree Marvel's been in a bit of a rough patch these last few years, but I thought this was just a fantastic farewell to the franchise. And maybe it wasn't for people who are more passionate than me, but whatevs, I thought it was great. I think there's a real step up in creative vision from the previous two. It's so vibrant, and I love all the prosthetics in a world with so much CGI, and I thought the story was really good. It was really dark and intense. A lot more like the Suicide Squad, which, you know, makes sense. I was just really affected by it emotionally. Rocket is definitely the most interesting character for me, so I really liked seeing his origin, despite how gut-wrenching it was. I get why people were mixed on this, but I had a great time. The most controversial movie of the year, and I guess by it being here, you know where I stand. Well, I mean, I'm not a passionate champion for this movie like some people, but I did enjoy it. I was flip-flopping on my opinion at first, but the more and more I think about it, the more sure I am that I do really like this movie. First off, this is maybe the most visually stunning film I've ever seen. Everything is so rich looking, but also so raw. I thought the score and music choices were also excellent, especially that final track. And as far as the actual story, I think some are confused about what point Fennell is trying to make about the elite here, with a lot of people saying it's shallow commentary. And yeah, I don't think it's saying anything about class and wealth, but I still got a lot out of it as simply a fun movie. I don't know, I'm of the opinion that sometimes things can be just a story with no greater meaning, and maybe that's lazy to say, but I really don't care. I guess one real issue for me is I don't like how spoon-fed the ending is. Like, the explanation of a quote-unquote twist is redundant in my opinion, because I thought that was the point of the movie I was seeing. I don't know, I was having a good time for the majority of the runtime, so it's not really enough to lose its spot here. Right off the bat, I'm gonna say I would have loved this much more if Leo wasn't the main guy, cause he really overshadows every aspect of the movie in my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of him in general, so that could just be a personal issue, but I do really wish it was written more from the perspective of Lily Gladstone's character Molly, because I really feel like this story should be hers and not Ernest and William's. That being said, Lily Gladstone really is the beating heart of this film, and she does a phenomenal job with what she's given. I think my two biggest praises here, aside from Gladstone's performance, come from the direction and editing. For a movie that's well over 3 hours, I really didn't feel like it was dragging at any point of the film, so once again, Thelma Schoonmaker proving she's the greatest to do it. And unpopular opinion, I know, but this Scorsese guy really knows what he's doing, especially with that beginning and ending. I just found it to be so powerful, and it really tied the whole movie and story together. I wasn't sure how I'd like Oppenheimer, as I've never been a huge Nolan guy, though I actually like Tenet for some reason. But yeah, the word is out, guys. Oppenheimer's good. I guess what I personally liked about Oppenheimer was the formatting of the story with the switching timelines, and I thought there were some really cool artistic choices that I'd never seen in a recent Nolan movie, especially with the use of black and white versus color and the lighting in some scenes. Yeah, it's a good movie, obviously. I know I'm not the one breaking the news, but I especially loved my experience of seeing it, which was in glorious 70mm film. I talked about this being a standout in my TIFF recap video, but as more time passes and I look back at it, I really love this movie more and more. I think it's hilarious, heartfelt, and just nothing I've seen before. I love the meta concept of playing a fictional version of yourself, and the whole idea of this movie has actually inspired me quite a bit. I'm championing hard for this movie because it's a pretty small Canadian project, and as I said in my TIFF video, Cody Lightning is such a talent, and I can't wait to see his future work, and I can't wait to see Hey Viktor again. I was on board with this from the moment I saw the Point Grey label on it, as I would trust Rogen and Goldberg with my life, and it did not disappoint. In fact, it exceeded my expectations as someone who really has no interest in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. I love the way the Turtles are portrayed in this movie. Instead of these generic, kind of catchphrasey action stars, they are normal teenagers, voiced by teenagers who bring a lot of authenticity to their respective roles. I think the animation is really cool for the most part. I really love how the turtles look as well as the environment. I'm a big fan of the rough and sketch kind of Spider-Verse inspired style. I think another real strength of this movie is the editing, which works so well with the animation style. I mean, that montage with No Diggity, are you kidding me? I was so blown away. Speaking of No Diggity, this movie has one of my favorite soundtracks of the year, both score and song-wise. It's such a well-curated collection that really enhances the vibe of this movie, and Reznor and Ross are fantastic per usual. I'm not a huge musical theater person, and I can really take or leave Ben Platt, but from the moment I saw the trailer, this became one of my most anticipated for the year, and it did not disappoint, and I had an incredible time seeing it. This is not a unique revelation, but it's very Christopher Guest in the way it tiptoes on absurdism. I mean, it's also a mockumentary about performing, which is quintessential Guest. Speaking of performing, there are such great performances from all of the kids here. I loved them. And as far as the main people go, the real standout here is Noah Galvin, who I was truly blown away by here. He's phenomenal. Io Debris is also in this, and she's, of course, everything. Another thing is this movie looks so insanely good. The handheld camera work is awesome, and I love the rich, grainy look it has. The original numbers in this are amazing, especially No Tomorrow. Definitely listen to the full version if you haven't. It's just a super cute and well-made movie that you can tell so much love went into. So if you also like mockumentaries like I do not miss this one. As an aspiring filmmaker from Canada, this movie is everything to me. It's both hilarious and devastating. It has incredibly stunning cinematography. I love how every single shot is framed. And there's a real ambience created with the color grading and the pace of the film that it's hard for me to explain, but I love it so much. Lawrence Queller is such a great character who I both love and despise. Isaiah Lettinen is just so good. Oh my god. It's a very relatable story of having bigger dreams than reality can fulfill, and I'm definitely not the first to say this, but I loved Movie, and you should watch Movie, and Chandler Levac, I love you. There's not a lot to say about Barbie that hasn't already been said. I know everyone's a little over it, including me, but that really doesn't change the fact that it's a super tight and hilarious film, and I had such a good time seeing it. Yeah, some people have soured on this movie in recent months, which is crazy to me, because how dare you act like this movie was actually bad when these two wrote the thing? Maybe I'm biased because Baumbach also co-wrote my favorite movie of all time, but I really think the writing is a huge standout in this movie. Yeah, it gets a bit cheesy here and there, but there are a few times I have laughed more at a movie than this one, and I think the Barbenheimer phenomenon and the cultural zeitgeist around it overshadowed really how special and unique of a film it is. I wasn't sure what I was going to think of this one, as the only Lanthimos film I'd seen prior was The Favorite, and, well, it wasn't my favorite, and I tend to not gravitate towards surrealism in movies, but I did really like this. Obviously, Emma Stone's performance is wacky and off the wall, but she also brings a lot of subtlety to the character of Bella that I think maybe would be lost with someone else in the role. I also thought Mark Ruffalo was a real standout here. I don't think I've ever seen such a pathetic man, and I loved every second he was on screen. Really, everyone's giving it their all in this, and it's just a delight to watch. Loved the score as well, so beautiful yet very unsettling and discordant, which is also how I describe the movie. To me, a lot of aspects of this feel like a live-action Miyazaki movie, especially with the production design and Willem Dafoe's character specifically. I said I don't really care for surrealism in movies, but I think this uses that aspect well, and it really enhances the story rather than distract from it. I I think my craziest film take of all time is just how neutral I am on the first Spider-Verse movie compared to everyone else. Obviously, it was a game changer for modern animation, but I just don't really care about it, I guess. Regardless, I still had so much interest in this one, as I do think the animation is incredible, and I was so pleasantly surprised by it. I found myself really engaged with this story, despite the insane multiverse fatigue I've been feeling these days. And of course, it features some of the coolest and most unique animation I've ever seen. You really can't take your eyes off the screen for even a second with this one. I loved all the characters, especially the Spot. I'm so happy about this Schwartzman renaissance of the last year, as he is and will always be the love of my life. This movie is just a visual masterpiece and is probably the best Marvel movie I've ever seen. I liked Shiva Baby enough, but this was a whole new level of Emma Seligman's brilliance. This is such a precise and tight movie, and I love how stylish and colorful it is. It reminds me of Scott Pilgrim in that way, which makes sense because that's a movie that Emma Seligman loves. Outstanding writing from Sennett and Seligman. This thing is so quotable, and I almost cried laughing multiple times. I just love Rachel Sennett so much, and once again, Iowa Debris, everything. She's one of the funniest people around right now, and I think she should be in every movie. And I really loved that this movie wasn't afraid to dive into absurdity. In fact, I loved it so much that my only complaint is that it doesn't do more of that.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a Joker.
After waiting for literally a year, I finally had the opportunity to see this, and it was truly one of the most thrilling experiences of my life. If you don't know what this is, it's a parody of the Joker and the DC franchise from comedian Vera Drew. It's a really interesting and hilarious commentary on gender roles and comedy in general, and it's also a very heartfelt autobiographical story about Vera's trans experience. It's raw, it's punk, it's really out there, but I also was very moved by it, which isn't something I necessarily expected. It's a very thoughtful movie that seamlessly incorporates the existing material of the DC universe into the story. I talked about how much I liked Hello Dankness, and the People's Joker is Hello Dankness times 1,000. So inspiring to see such a unique, collaborative, small-scale production be this big thing. Vera Drew, you are my hero. Though this movie isn't going to be for everyone, I think it's incredibly important to see if you have a chance. And now for my top 3 of the year, starting with... I have very little interest in wrestling or knowledge of the Von Erich family, but I always enjoy Zac Efron, and I've loved Harris Dickinson and everything I've seen of him, so I was really up for this, and I am so glad I saw this because it is truly phenomenal. This movie has some of the best cinematography and editing I've seen this year, and features some of the best performances too. This is the first time I'd seen Jeremy Allen White act, and I thought he was just excellent. And Zac Efron should, but probably won't, get an Oscar nom, which sucks, but he is a winner in my heart. Based on the subject matter, this could have been a total Oscar bait melodrama, but Sean Durkin manages to balance the tragedy and the heart to perfection and creates an incredibly paced and engaging film.
Within the digital world of the computer itself.
I've probably thought about and talked about Blackberry most days since I first saw it back in May, which is a sentence I never expected to say when I first heard about it. It's been hard to pitch this one, as at a far glance it does come off as incredibly generic, and I'm sure Jay Baruchel's wigs have put some people off. What I've been telling people is that the story this film's telling isn't really even about the rise of the Blackberry or the fall of it. It's about how success changes you and your relationships, inflating egos and making compromises to your core values to keep the dream afloat. Let me tell you, I've never cared about the Blackberry and honestly still don't, but it's a completely relatable concept about being a creative framed within this specific story, and that's the part I connect with. On a technical level, this movie is perfection, incredible editing, and great dialogue. I truly quote this thing constantly. The cinematography is also insane, so controlled controlled at points, yet most of the time it seems like not even the camera knows what's about to happen. I love the documentary feel it has, where most of it is shot from very far away and through glass. It's very in line with the rest of Matt's work, and I just think Jared Rabb is a genius. I also love how the color grading and clothing are used as storytelling tools in the movie. The contrast of oranges and blues representing Rim's origins and the corporate world respectively is just so cool to me. This also has one of my favorite soundtracks of all time, not just because so many of my favorite artists are featured, but how the song choices are used to add depth to the characters, especially with Jim Balsillie. The score is also brilliant and so unique. Shout out to Jay McCarroll, he's also a genius. Glenn Howerton gives a fantastic performance, as you've probably heard, along with Jay Baruchel, and I cannot talk about this movie without mentioning the character of Doug Freegan, whose effect on me has been detrimental. Doug is probably one of my favorite characters of all time, which is apparently an unpopular opinion. I think I like him so much because, come on, he looks like that first of all, but really because his character is where Matt's signature reference-based dialogue and humor pokes through, which is my favorite aspect of his work, and it's what makes Blackberry, in my opinion, a true Matt Johnson film. In conclusion, I love it. I ended up seeing it 5 times, which I'll acknowledge is insane person behavior, but if you skipped out on this because you have corporate drama product biopic fatigue, I'm telling you, this is a massive oversight and you need to see it immediately. I fell in love with this movie the moment it started. Obviously, I'm obsessed with 60s and 70s music and fashion, and I loved how committed this was to that aesthetic, but that is really just the cherry on top of this masterpiece. Sitting there in the theater watching the movie unfold, I could feel it altering my brain chemistry, and I knew that it was going to be detrimental to my personality, and then something happens around the 90-minute mark of the movie that hits incredibly, eerily close to home, and it just floored me. I couldn't believe it. This movie I was already so obsessed with, speaking to me on such a personal level. It was a very profound feeling that I still haven't been able to shake since seeing it. I loved and connected with Angus so much. Will be basing my entire personality off him, except I don't have to do much. I already look and dress exactly like that, and even have a bunch of the same posters on my wall. It's crazy. Anyways, seriously, Dominic Sessa, he is a star, and I am his biggest fan. The performances are all top-notch here, especially Da'Vine Joy Randolph. She is a powerhouse and such a warm presence in this film, and I love Giamatti's performance and the character of Paul Hunnam so much more than I thought I would. He's harsh, yes, but there's a pitiful comedy to him that is so endearing, as well as the bond he forms with Angus. I had a really hard time in school, and I absolutely hated it, but my teachers were always so important to me. I wasn't a troublemaker like Angus, so I'm sure it wasn't as difficult for them, but without their advocacy, I would never have made it, and I think Hunnam is a great representation of those kinds of teachers, the ones whose influence is carried through the rest of your life.
Man, no, you're just a kid, you're just beginning, and you're smart. You've got time to turn things around.
A very simple line, but it's one that's really stuck with me since I first saw the movie. When I was first thinking about this video, I jokingly said that my #1 movie was pretty set in place unless when I see the Holdovers, it somehow changes my life, and that's exactly what happened. It feels soon to say this, but The Holdovers has truly become one of my favorite movies of all time, and it couldn't have come at a better time in my life. And there you have it, my top 20 of 2023. My list was a little different than previous years, definitely very eclectic, but I think it's a really good list. Something I noticed is there's a bit of a trend of Canadian filmmakers here, which is really cool, and I'm very proud as a Canadian to share their movies with you. So that's it. Thanks everyone for your support this past year. Hopefully you stick around for this next one, because I've got some great videos planned. Let me know what you thought of these movies, and see you later.